Yeah,
Yeah.
afterwards. It starts at 11:45.
11:45. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so all you have to do is just start the webinar here.
Okay.
I'll also start it from my computer as well.
Okay.
I just need to help somebody else at the
Okay.
moment.
Yeah.
But
That
if
sounds
anything,
good.
yeah, be right there. All
Okay.
right.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Let me just type this. All right.
Okay. And then the mic is here. Oh. Yeah, so we could do that.
Good idea. And you can do that. I know somebody who does. Oh, good. Hi, good morning. To our rescue again.
Maybe not fully, but maybe halfway or something. Just like a little bit, like just a little bit so that. Yeah, that's perfect.
So I think we're going to get started. So this is a really very special time for me personally and also for all of us at the CPC. While Santi is always close to our hearts, I think these last few days we've been reminded ever more so of her spirit and her courage as we welcomed her two colleagues that you'll have the opportunity to meet just a little bit. I would like to welcome all of you who are here and hope you are enjoying your lunch. And for those of you online, a very warm welcome. And we wish you are also able to join us here at the Mailman School of Public Health. Just like to welcome you again. We are honored that you are here as we launch this inaugural Santi Lecture Series at Columbia University. This series was created to celebrate and honor our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Santi Kusumaningrum. She received her doctorate in public health in 2019 from the Department of Population and Family Health. And she was also the co-founder and the director of PUSKAPA, which is a leading think tank on child well-being and children's rights in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Santi exemplified a unique ability to bridge the worlds of academia, policy, and practice to advance children's rights and well-being. With support of the Oak Foundation, the Santi Lecture Series will recognize and amplify policy research on children's rights and well-being that are undertaken by emerging scholars from the Global South. In this very small way, Santi's light, her curiosity, and courage will continue to inspire and bring us hope. So I'd like to welcome, we are honored to launch this series with our very special guests from PUSKAPA, Indonesia. And I'm just going to give you their first names because that's probably better than me mispronouncing their very beautiful but complicated to pronounce last names. Dr. Agast, who is currently the director of PUSKAPA and a very long and colleague of Santi, and also Dr. Hani, who will take us on a journey exploring climate change, children's rights, and gender. So I'll turn it over now to Dr. Agast, who will provide us with a few opening comments, and then she will introduce our keynote speaker, and we will try to keep a little bit to schedule and follow with an open discussion of questions from both those of you who are here and those of you who are also online. So again, a very warm welcome, and Dr. Agast.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I go by Agas. I do have a very long name. It's Niluh Putu Maitra Agastya. I'll be happy to share with you why is it long, maybe when we have the time to chat. So again, it's an honor to stand before you today at the Santi Kusumaningrum inaugural memorial lecture. I hope I'm not going to shed tears. The last time I was here, I was with Santi, and that was probably about 10 years ago. So there's a lot of good memories here, but I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the CPC Learning Network for initiating this lecture series to celebrate and honor Santi's legacy. And I think this initiative really reflects her deep commitment in fostering collaborations to address so many complex social challenges in Indonesia and beyond. So again, 15 years ago, Santi laid the foundation for PUSKAPA to be a pioneering center dedicated to advancing child protection, well-being, and social justice. Her vision continues to guide us, even now as we know we navigate so many evolving global and national challenges. At PUSKAPA, we remain committed to carrying forward her legacy, ensuring that her analytical approaches, her evidence-based advocacy, and passion for cultivating knowledge for the well-being of children and family live on. So with that, today I want to recognize the importance of collective support in sustaining this work. I want to really extend my gratitude and PUSKAPA gratitude to all of you, again, colleagues from the Columbia University, partners and friends who are here in this room and also online, who continue to contribute to the mission of PUSKAPA, and your support is very instrumental in advancing research and policy initiatives that improve the lives of children, not just in Indonesia, but also globally. Now moving to the main event, I'm delighted to introduce you to Hani. Her name is Dr. Hani Yulindra Sari as the inaugural speaker of the Santi Kusumaningrum Memorial Lecture Series. So Hani has been working with PUSKAPA as a research affiliate because she comes from a different university, but with the same mindset and interest, and she's been doing research on preventing violence in schools and communities. As a lecturer and researcher, through her expertise in gender and education, she has not only shaped policies and programs, but she has also strengthened understanding of how gender perspective can be meaningfully integrated into research and practice. And again, that reflects the work that Santi has been doing to then continue not just doing research, but then bringing those research into meaningful changes. So today's lecture, Hani will explore a pressing global issue, intersection of children's rights, gender, and climate justice. And she will challenge us to rethink traditional protectionist approaches and how do we foster critical thinking and active participation among children to address climate crisis. We in PUSKAPA feel that this perspective is essential as climate change disproportionately affects children, especially children in Global South, and by exacerbating inequalities and limiting their access to essential resources. So we hope that today's lecture will spark discussions among us in the room and others online, and to inspire further research and action in this field. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Hani as our speaker today.
Thank you so much, Agus and Casey, for the generous introductions. So today I will talk about actually participations of children and youth in climate change initiative. And I'd like to emphasize on the cross-cutting issues of children's rights and gender in climate change. So this lecture is not only to remember, but to also celebrate the profound legacy of Dr. Santi Kusumaningrum, a passionate social scientist whose heart and mind were dedicated to the most vulnerable among us, our children. Dr. Santi understood that behind every statistic lies a child with dreams, struggles, and a right to safe and nurturing environment. Through her significant multidisciplinary research, she skillfully wove together insights from various fields, sociology, psychology, public health, and education, to illuminate the intricate realities faced by children in vulnerable situations. With unwavering compassion, Dr. Santi transformed data into powerful narratives, ensuring that the voices of children were not just heard, but truly listened to. Her tireless efforts in informed child protection policies have been nothing short of heroic. She fought relentlessly for policies that prioritize the safety and well-being of children, advocating for those who often have no voice in the halls of power. Dr. Santi was not just a researcher, she was a beacon of hope and a champion for justice. Her work has inspired countless individuals, including me, to join the missions of safeguarding our children's futures, fostering a community of advocates who share her visions for a world where every child can thrive. As we reflect on her extraordinary contribution, let us honor Dr. Santi by committing ourselves to continue the work she so passionately championed. May we carry forward her legacy of compassion, collaboration, and unwavering dedication to the rights of every child. In this occasion, with the spirit of continuing Dr. Santi's legacy, I will address children's participation in climate change initiative within the Indonesia context, focusing on the cross-cutting issues of children's rights and gender equity that are integral to fostering meaningful engagement and effective solutions. In Indonesia, next. So this is actually my outline. All right, thank you. In Indonesia, there is a growing recognition of the essential role that children and youth play as advocates for environmental sustainability, leading to their increased engagement in climate change initiatives. The participation of children in this initiative can be categorized into two distinct approaches. The first approach positions children as the future generation tasked with safeguarding the sustainability of their environment. This perspective emphasizes the importance of educating children about environmental issues, encouraging their involvement primarily as learners and listeners on topics related to ecological stewardship. In alignment with this approach, Indonesia has implemented a dedicated subject, Pendidikan Lingkungan Hidup or environmental education, across all levels of schooling. This initiative has spurred a substantial body of research focused on the development of teaching and learning models for environmental educations, including my team ongoing research on farming method for young children to increase young children's ecological awareness, and my current project with GIZ on the creation of green jobs for gender equity and social inclusion in forestry and circular economy. On the other hand, the second approach, centering on children's activism, has garnered relatively little attention in academic research in Indonesia. Among the few is the study conducted by Dr. Santi Kusumaningrum and her team in 2023, which explored the engagement of youth in climate and environmental matters and advocates for youth participation to move beyond tokenistic participation. Today, I would like to build upon Dr. Santi's advocacy by emphasizing the urgent need for further research on children's participation in climate change initiatives. This research should focus on enhancing meaningful engagement of children, incorporating a gender perspective, and ensuring that their voices are effectively heard in the formulation of climate-related policies. Indonesia, the world's largest archipelagic country, faces significant climate risks that disproportionately threaten its population, particularly children. Indonesia ranked 14th in the Global Climate Risk Index regarding exposure to extreme weather. A UNICEF report in 2023 highlights alarming climate conditions affecting the country, such as rising temperatures, altered rainfall patterns, and increasing sea levels. Over the past 3 decades, average air temperatures in Indonesia have increased by approximately 0.9 degrees Celsius, with projection indicating further rises of up to 2 degrees Celsius in regions like Nusa Tenggara by 2050. This warming trend is accompanied by a general decrease in annual rainfall and extended dry season, raising concern about water availability and agricultural productivity. The air quality in Indonesian cities is also worrying. In 2024, the air quality in Jakarta was still categorized as unhealthy with air quality index scored 177. It ranks as the worst air quality in the world. Moreover, the country is particularly susceptible to sea level rise, with estimates suggesting that the population at risk from extreme river flooding could increase by approximately 1.4 million between 2035 and 2044. If adaptation measures are not implemented, over 4.2 million people could face permanent flooding by 2070 to 2100 due to rising sea level. The slide shows that there were 3,265 natural disasters incidents in 2024, affected more than 8 million people. Since the beginning of 2025 this year until today, the 9th of April 2025, I just updated the data this morning. So there have been 857 natural disasters, including 585 flood incidents, 76 landslide incidents, and 153 extreme weather incidents this year, which affected more than 2.5 million people. Unfortunately, specific data on how many children among them is not available. It is very difficult to get valid data in our country. Climate change disproportionately affects vulnerable populations. Children, in particular girls, in Indonesia are particularly at risk. As future guardians of the planet, children face greater exposure to climate change risks, including health problems, displacement, and interruption of education. And in addition, their voices are often marginalized in decision-making discussion on climate-related policies, leading to a phenomenon of tokenism in which young people's participation is superficial and does not translate into significant involvement or influence. This lack of genuine inclusion inhibits children's ability to defend their rights to growing environmental challenges. Further, this further consolidating existing inequalities. In addition, the gender dimension of climate change requires critical examination. The existing social structure that prioritizes male perspective and roles on resource management, leaving women and girls vulnerable to economic and social instability. Discussion about the impact of climate change on children is often missing gender dimension in it. The absence of gender consideration means that initiatives often fail to meet the exact need of the affected group, perpetuating the marginalization cycle. The collateral impact of climate change extends beyond environmental concern, posing serious threats to children's rights and well-being, as I said earlier. So first is the health implication of climate change manifests themselves by increasing the prevalence of diseases transmitted by vectors, malnutrition, and respiratory diseases associated with low air quality and extreme climate events. In addition, the psychological impact of climate-induced stressors, such as displacement due to flooding, are exacerbated by inadequate mental health resources, further impairing children's overall well-being and their rights to a healthy environment. Moreover, women and girls report high sexual harassment when sleeping, showering, bathing, and dressing in emergency shelter, tents, and camp. This adds another physical and psychological distress to them. Climate change does not directly instigate violence. However, it destabilizes familial economies and imposes financial strain on parents. Crop failures and unsuccessful fishing expedition can impose financial burden on households, heightening familial tensions and the likelihood of parental aggression toward children. So the research is in the fishermen community. Financial struggles among parents may impair their emotional regulation, resulting in violence toward vulnerable family members. This cycle of violence not only inflicts immediate harms on children, but can also lead to long-term psychological issues. Furthermore, this instability usually forces children to work financially to help their families, violating their rights to education and play. Economic pressure can also lead to a gender disparity in child labor, with generally prioritized boys for job opportunities, while girls remain responsible for unpaid homework, reinforcing traditional gender roles and preventing gender equity efforts. Education is significantly interrupted as climate change intensifies, fundamentally altering the landscape in which children learn. School infrastructure is usually poorly equipped to deal with extreme climate events. Dry, flooding, and growing sea level can lead to school closure and infrastructure damage. In Bekasi alone, this year in March, there are 114 schools affected by the flood. When schools are not in normal condition and become difficult to access, girls face more challenges to reach schools than boys. Furthermore, girls face extra barriers to education as families prioritize immediate survival in relation to long-term educational investment. Girls are often taken out of school due to financial consideration, and boys continue to attend school. Especially in rural areas, child marriage is potentially be chosen as one of the family solutions for their hardship, as reported by Plan International in 2013, that after the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia, Sri Lanka and India, child marriage rate increased, especially when the government economic support was only provided for married couples or people starting a family. A quantitative analysis by Kumaladewi and Dartanto in 2018 also shows significant association in Indonesia between the intensity of natural disaster and child marriage. I use Landy's participation model to analyze children's and youth participation in climate change initiative in Indonesia. Landy's model emphasizes that participation must be intentional, inclusive, and respectful of children's opinion. Landy's model has 4 elements of children's participation: space, voice, audience, and influence. Under this model, children must be given the opportunity to facilitate it, to express their views. Not only that, their voice need to be heard and acted upon as appropriate. Thus, participation is not simply to be present. It requires mechanisms that guarantee that children's perspectives are considered significantly in the design, implementation, and evaluation of climatic initiatives. The application of Landi models within Indonesia would require rethinking commitment methods to create a truly participatory environment that respects children as agents of change instead of simply beneficiaries of adult agendas. In terms of space and voice, there are many initiatives to facilitate children to express their views on climate change. For example, Save the Children Indonesia has Aksi Generasi Iklim and the Youth Camp 2024 initiative. Since 2022, Save the Children Indonesia has launched the Aksi Generasi Iklim campaign to raise awareness about the climate crisis' impact on children. In 2024, the campaign conducted a national kick-off rally across 8 provinces, including Jakarta, West Java, Yogyakarta, East Java, Makassar, Palu, Bali, and Sumba. The campaign featured various activities aimed at engaging young people and community in climate issues. Notable events included the Festival Air or Water Festival in Bali, which focused on water access issues, where children participated in discussion about the importance of clean water. In Yogyakarta, the Goes to School initiative educated children on climate impacts through interactive activities. Makassar also hosted a beach cleanup event to address plastics pollution, encouraging youth participation in environmental cleanup efforts. Additionally, a fun walk in West Java aimed to raise awareness about air pollution, while activities in Sumba highlighted the link between climate change and health issues like dengue fever, which is very profound in Indonesia. The campaign culminated in Jakarta with a focus on plastic waste during Car Free Day, showcasing children's voice in advocating for climate change action. So the youth camp in 2024 held from August 9 to 11 in Semarang brought together 100 youth from coastal areas impacted by climate change. It is supported by the Adaptation Fund and organized by various governmental and non-governmental partners. The camp aimed to instill climate change awareness among participants. Key activities included interactive learning through simulations, games, cultural activities to help participants better understand climate issues, and the camp also emphasizes community engagement with youth discussing local climate challenges and declaring commitment to initiate local adaptation action. Furthermore, the initiative highlighted the importance of youth advocacy in climate adaptation effort, encouraging young people to become change agents with their community. However, in terms of audience and influence, Indonesia still has a lot of work to do. Although the Indonesian government has ratified the UNCRC and committed to the SDGs that emphasizes the right of children to participate in the decisions that affect their lives, expressing the need for participation for children in social matters, including environmental matters, the operationalization of this commitment often results in what can be called tokenistic participations. This phenomenon manifests when children are superficially included in consultation process without any substantive influence in decision making. Local practices in Indonesia reveal a marked contrast between the ideals affirmed by international frameworks and the realities in the field. Cultural perception with respect to childhood and authority play an important role in configuring practices related to the inclusion of children in environmental initiative. In many Indonesian communities, traditional views can prioritize adult experience and reduce the credibility of children's perspective. Traditional views, so this further strengthening the gap between global mandates and local reality. The consequence is the proliferation of initiatives that claim to adopt child participation but ultimately fail to provide opportunities for the agency and substantive impact. For example, a research by Patawala reveals that children were only invited once in the process of RPETRA or child-friendly integrated public space development. They were asked to make a sketch of facilities they wanted to be provided in RPETRA. However, they were not invited in the final decision-making meeting. Whether or not their aspiration was taken into consideration in the decision was unknown. Although children can be invited to participate in conferences or workshops apparently aimed at climate defense, their role is often limited to that of spectators instead of active agents of change. These frames do not recognize the importance of taking advantage of the ideas, perspective, and experiences of children in understanding the climatic vulnerabilities and promoting resilience within their communities. This tokenistic commitment not only undermines the potential of the vulnerable groups' voices, but also present a risk for the effectiveness of climate initiatives aimed at addressing the pressing environmental challenges facing the country. Another example is an examination of specific case studies, such as mangrove rehabilitation project in the Seribu Island. Although these projects are consumed ostensibly to involve young people as stakeholders active in environmental management, reality on the ground reveals substantial differences concerning the importance of their contribution, ultimately failing to empower them significantly. As indicated by Dalimunte and Putri, citizen participation is often misunderstood as community involvement. Citizens, including children, are frequently involved in the implementation of a decision that has been passed by the elite. These activities, although ostensibly applicable, often operate in forced executive who limit the real agency. Although children's participation is highlighted in promotional materials and reported as a success in terms of participatory approaches, the deeper implications of their contribution are rarely recognized or translated into decision-making power. In addition, the roles of children in this project often reflect a superficial commitment instead of substantial participation. Local coordinators and project managers can perceive the involvement of the children mainly as a means to fulfilling international mandates for inclusiveness and representation. Consequently, children are led to lend a semblance of base support, but they find their influence diluted when it comes to shaping global objective or project management. This demonstrates a clear disconnection between the ambitious objectives set by international executives, such as the UNCRC, which emphasizes children's right to express their opinion in matters that affected them, and the real practice observed in local initiatives. Okay, do I still have time? Okay. Furthermore, the current landscape of climate policy in Indonesia often lacks a picture that recognizes the rights of children and the nuances of gender equality. Without intentional strategies to integrate youth perspective, especially those that reflect the specific experiences of the girls, the initiative remains insufficient to deal with the realities of the adversities. An effective climatic action should recognize the right of children to participate in decisions that affect their environment. It is essential also to encourage real inclusion that transcends tokenistic gesture, ensuring that children, in particular girls, have a platform in which their voices can inform and model equitable climatic policies. The integration of gender equity in climatic strategies is not simply a moral imperative, but an essential tool for promoting resilience and enhancing future generations to combat climate change. Consequently, it is essential to support policies that prioritize these intersections, creating spaces for marginalized voices to contribute significantly to climate dialogue. In addition, participatory mechanisms often do not have the structural support necessary to ensure that children's votes are heard or valued significantly. There is a significant absence of platforms so that children communicate their perspective or to provide comments that can influence current or future initiatives. Instead, children's contributions are often relegated to performative acts that are used to satisfy external observers without generating a real dialogue. For example, similar observations have been documented in community climate action projects involving young people in various Indonesian regions, where children participate in environmental training sessions, actively participate in educating wider community, especially their peer group, about climate change, but are often excluded from strategic discussion concerning the government's climate-related decision-making and the project implementation and evaluation. The tendency to involve children in limited and predefined capacities without promoting their ability to shape the project management strengthens the existing power imbalance between adult stakeholders and young participants. The superficial inclusion results in improper representation of the real concern and needs of children and youth, especially young women and girls, removing critical dialogue necessary to promote true equity in climate initiative. As Indonesia continues to face the branches of climate change, the integration of genuine involvement of children and youth and equity consideration must be preceded, ensuring that their participation is not merely performative but transformative. The intersection of climate change, the right of children, and gender equity in Indonesia reveal a critical narrative that underlines the need for a substantial commitment rather than a simple tokenism in the participation of young people. The current approach to the involvement of young people in climatic initiative often perpetuates the surface commitment, which does not improve the children's agency, in particular the girls, who are influenced in a disproportionate way by climatic vulnerabilities. This tokenistic involvement undermines the potential for significant contribution from youth voices in the strategies for processing policies and climatic adaptation. Instead of enhancing the next generation to actively participate in model the agenda of the climate change, tokenism relegates young people to the role of passive observer, reducing their ability to influence urgent climatic action that threaten their future. By recognizing and addressing the tokenistic aspect of children's participation in Indonesia's climate initiative, stakeholders can develop a more inclusive and impactful engagement model that not only respects children's rights but also enhance the overall effectiveness of climate action in the region. A solely children's rights perspective is insufficient for fostering inclusivity and transformation. It is essential to integrate a gender transformative approach to ensure equitable and just climate change initiative. To address the shortcoming in children's participation in Indonesia Climate Initiative, it is crucial to implement strategies that foster genuine engagement. One effective approach is to establish youth-led advisory forums that facilitate children's active involvement in decision-making processes, promoting leadership skills, and ensuring their perspectives are integral to planning and implementation. Additionally, training programs for both children and project facilitators could enhance understanding of meaningful participation, moving beyond tokenism. Partnerships with local educational institutions can deepen youth commitment to environmental issues, fostering sustained engagement beyond isolated projects. By emphasizing children participation, initiative can not only align with international mandates, but also cultivate a culture of respect and agency, positioning children as pivotal agents in the fight against climate change. The disconnect between global directives and local realities often result in superficial compliance rather than authentic engagement. This tokenism creates a cycle where children's voices are underutilized and leading to disillusionment and disengagement from climate initiative. To break the cycle, local governments must prioritize genuine inclusion of children as legitimate stakeholders. Establishing mechanisms to ensure access to information and training is essential. Tutoring programs that pair youth with local leaders can facilitate knowledge transfer, while participatory platforms that emphasize active listening can validate children's contribution. Strengthening community structure to promote intergenerational dialogue can also bridge the gap between adult-dominated network and youth aspiration. Successful programs in Asia-Pacific region, such as in the Philippines, Youth for Climate Initiative, and Vietnam's Forum for the Climate of Children, demonstrate the effectiveness of young people's involvement in climate action through collaborative processes. In Indonesia, establishing Youth Climate Council could formalize children's engagement with local authorities, ensuring their suggestions are prioritized in community climate action plan. Integrating technology such as mobile apps and social media can also further enhance participation, enabling children from diverse backgrounds to share their insight. So in conclusion, fostering significant youth engagement in Indonesia's climate initiative requires a multifaceted approach that enhance educational curriculum, build local capacities, and empower children as active participants. By adapting successful regional models to local contexts, we can create more inclusive environmental governance that respects and amplifies children's voices in the fight against climate change. Continuous research on structure that facilitate the genuine involvement of young people are vital, especially when the consequences of climate change become increasingly deep and long range. Recognizing the urgency of this crisis, the implication of involving children holistically in climate initiatives extend beyond immediate environmental research. Trained children become advocates of sustainable practices in their families and communities, promoting a culture of environmental stewardship that is essential to achieving long-term sustainability goals. As climate change continues to challenge Indonesia's vulnerability, promoting a paradigm shift in the way children are involved in climatic mitigation and adaptation effort is not just beneficial but necessary. Given their unique position as current and future stakeholders, their significant participation can catalyze transformative action that align with the general objective of sustainable development and resilience. Future research should therefore explore innovative models and practices that improve the significant involvement of children into climate initiative. translating local aspiration into called action and fill the gap between international expectation and local realities. As an Indonesian scholar, I aspire to honor Dr. Santi's legacy. I become very emotional when I heard her name. By simultaneously engaging in research and advocacy to promote meaningful participation of children, particularly in the context of climate change. Lastly, let's remember Robert Swan's powerful words. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. This reminds us that each of us has a role to play in combating climate change, especially our children and youth, who are not only the leaders of tomorrow, but also the change maker of today. So let's empower them to take action, foster their voices, and support their initiative. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Hani. That was really beautiful. And thank you for, challenging us to re-envision child participation in this space.
Did you want me to say something? Okay. So thank you, Hani. And you certainly, I know how proud Santi would be of you. And she would also not just be proud, but she would say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and what can we do next together? So in honoring both her and your work and the work of PUSKAPA, again, we are honored to have you with us and look forward to a discussion and lots of opportunities to focus on not just the performative, but the transformative nature of child participation. As you were speaking, I was reminded that child participation is perhaps the heart of the work that CPC has done from its very beginning, recognizing the methodologies and the structures that we can do together to enhance that. So we can open it up to questions from all of you as well. I think we have a big group online, so we're happy to also recognize questions online if there are any. So first, Twai, thank you for coming. Twai is for those of you who don't know, is our wonderful new director of the population and family health, and I know very much a focus on climate change and gender. So very grateful to have you with us, Twai.
I think that's my cue to
That's
ask
your
questions.
cue, yes.
Well, Dr. Hani, thank you so much and welcome to Colombia. It's wonderful to have you here. Maybe I can push you a little bit. I think you talk about, so I struggle with this idea of, I recognize the importance of recognizing the needs of children. I would love to see a bit more information about what those needs are. I find is I would challenge you a little bit to think about, should children just be children and adults should be responsible into protecting our children. I find obviously I work a lot with adolescents and they are children, and sometimes I find it hard when advocates say, let's bring them to the table. They have to be making these policy. And I'm not sure, is that the right approach? Should we be making sure their needs and protection are met? And how do we hold government and society accountable? And our children should thrive and learn. I like the learning component connecting with education institution to teach children to be much more climate aware. But I struggle a little bit to, I find throughout your remarks there's a bit of a burden that we have to put on our children. And I'm not sure what your perspective is on that. And if you can be a bit more concrete in terms of what is a transformative approach versus a platitude approach would look like in terms of research or in terms of programming or in terms of policy dialogue.
Well, the challenge is very difficult to answer. But for me, the component of participations and protection should be balanced. So to protect children, we need to know what their needs, what they really, what is important for them. Sometimes within the protections approach, we forget what their needs are. So we tend to assume what best for them. We tend to assume that all the things, the decision we make is for the best interest of the child. But we forget, what do they think about themselves? How they think about what is the best interest for them. Of course, talking about children, it's not easy because children's, as we know, it's from 0 to 18 years old, right? So from 0 to 18 years old, we cannot really treat them the same because they have different, like for children, for teenagers, they already able to think about the future. They already able to consider their needs and then the consequences for the future. While like very young babies, they don't know the consequences of their action, probably not as complex as the older one. So talking about children, it is, for me, it is not easy. We need to know also the age range as well. So we need to really ask them to be involved in the discussion, to listen to them, even because most of my work is in early childhood education. And in early childhood education, the component of protection is very, very strong. And the assumption of the teachers especially is that young children hasn't been able to think in a complex way as adult or older children. So the teacher tend to take decision to decide a lot of things for them. They design learning materials based on the assumption of the teachers. They never ask to the children, what do you want to know about climate change? What do you want to learn? How do you feel when the temperature has risen? How do you feel today? Concerning the temperature, the rain, what do you want to do with the rain? How do you feel when there's a flood? Something like that. They don't ask. They just make decision for the children. They think that the decision is for the interest of the child. But sometimes even young children know what they want. Like, for example, there are a lot of floods in Indonesia. And I often see young children play with water in the flood. They swim in the flooding water. So they swim, they play, they laugh and things like that. We never ask them, like, when this flood happened, what do you want? Because we as adults often take them out of their environment and put them in the shelter that we think it's safer for them. And while the parents, like the dad and the mom, has to go back to the housing complex to clean up, to take care of their house, and to clean up and to make the environment ready and clean for the children. The children was not involved in all those things because of the assumption that we are protecting them. But when we ask the children, they might want to be involved in cleaning up, while they also can see the what do you call it, the phenomena as something fun for them. It's something that it's beyond adult assumption. We always assume that they are suffering in, well, as a disclaimer, I don't mean that flood is fun for the children, no, but we can also involve them in cleaning up the house, for example. It's not only to involve them in whatever the adult do, but also I think it is also important to inform them the consequences of the climate change. And also, well, I see children always have something to, what do you call it? Children always find a way to be happy to adapt. And I don't know whether it's answering your question or not, but yes, it is difficult to, it put a lot of pressure on us to listen to the children, and we always assume that we know better than the children. I think we need to listen more to the children. That's the initial assumption that we have to adopt, I think. And after that, just listen to them first. We never ask. When I prepare this paper for today, I see that the campaign that the children, in the campaigns, in the children campaigns, what they are campaigning is like changing the carbon initiative, something like that. That is not children. Like, lowering carbon level. That's not children's need. I don't think that's children need. That's adult agenda. And the children voicing adult agenda. And they are there campaigning for adult agenda. I really want to listen. What do they really need? And that's what we haven't found. So I'm suggesting that especially Indonesian researchers, to do more research on that and listen to what they really need. And then we take action after that. We can decide together and involve them in every decision making. Not only, inviting them to do something like, sketching things and then asking them what they need, but then after that, during the decision-making process, they never invited again. They are only invited once. It's like ticking the box that, okay, the government already involved children in the decision-making process, but the real decision-making process is unknown. Whose agenda is that? I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question.
No, thank you. And there's only a few minutes left, but there's a related question that maybe Agast can take as well. And it's, so from one of our online panelists, they have found that when children are involved in participatory peer research, as researchers rather than research participants, their advocacy and activism is enhanced. So how far are children in Indonesia involved in research with their peers on the impact of climate change? And I was thinking maybe you can share a little bit about the research that PUSKAPA had recently done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the question. I think this is related to also your question, Joy. So I think it's not putting a burden on them, but I think what is very critical in the Indonesian context is that society still thinks that children does not have the capacity and the agency to actually say what they want. I think that's something that's why we in PUSKAPA, we uh, really think about like how do we meaningfully engage youth in research. So answering to that question from the online audience is that in PUSKAPA, we actually haven't done a lot of engaging youth in research because we understand that the first very essential thing in the Indonesian context, there's first society thinks that children don't have the agency and they don't understand. But the number one, what happens from there is that they never been given the opportunity to even learn of like what is participation and how can I participate. So what PUSKAPA has done, that's why we said we haven't really done a lot, because we really want to make sure that when we engage children, they're engaged meaningfully in a way that we just don't go to them and ask, what do you think about this? But we really want to make sure that the instruments that we're using when we're working with them is also cultivating their ability to think critically. And that's something that PUSKAPA has been doing, that we just don't want to involve children like, oh yeah, we involve them. Because it's hard, like even if engaging children in research, there are stages to that. Like, and the ideal one would be that gold standard where we come to children and then they could say, like, and we can design a research together. But again, I have to be honest, I don't think that's something that's applicable in Indonesia. It's applicable in Indonesia, and then we've seen so many of that. But in spaces where there are privileged children, they're privileged youth, so they're in universities, they're straight A students in high school. But then in PUSKAPA, what we really want to do and what we've done in our research is we go to communities where we know these children has not had the opportunity to then being being trained to be able to think critically, to be able to understand what is their rights, how do I then voice my rights and my concerns. So answering to that questions, yes, I think there's advances in Indonesia where there are research where they've done this, where they really started to engage youth, especially in research. But we see that many of those are that side of the youth where they are privileged. And then what we want to say, I think what Hani is trying to say here as well, and what PUSKAPA is wanting to say as well, that we also want to engage all youth, especially those in very more disadvantaged situations. And it's not about that trying to involve them in research, but when we involve them in research, and what PUSKAPA thinks when we want to do research with them is then to build that ability to be able to think critically, because that's also something that's, again, that's not a known curriculum in Indonesian education system. And that's what we see once we give that space and give that capacity of youth and children to be able to think critically. That's where their agency will come out. And that's not only climate, because there, for example, issues on sexual and reproductive health, for example, like that's where we need them to be able to think critically first, to be able to then make decisions on consent, for example. So that relates to sexual violence for dating, violence and such, where I think in Indonesia, and I think that's what PUSKAPA we've been doing, is that in research, when we want their participation, it's not just them designing and then doing data collection and then making that, like twice that, like sitting and then making that decision, giving out their thoughts about what advocacy should work, what policy should be for them, but then starting it from the very beginning, that having that ability to really think critically, so that building their agency, and then be able to that, what we said, not putting burden on them. Because then if we don't do those initial homework, then they'll have that burden. But when we start with having them think, learning to think critically, able to make decisions, informed decisions about what they need, that's where we don't put burden on them. Hopefully, that having that, they'll build on that agency, and then, yeah, having that capacity to then decide and say, this is what we want. Yeah. So maybe that's my take on how PUSKAPA see children participation and youth engagement in research. Yeah, thank you.
That unfortunately brings us to the end of this particular phase of the discussion. And again, just thank all of you online. I feel like I could see you, but I have a sense that you've been very engaged with us. And thank you both for your visit. And we have a couple of more days to continue to discuss these issues. Thank you all for joining us. And I know we have a class in here, but the class is Sabrina. So we can, those of you who want, can stay a little bit longer and have some more sandwiches if you haven't had your lunch already. But thank you again. Oh, and I have a little gift.